Let's start by looking at this picture. So what do you see in this picture? Good, so we see a bird, we see berries, and we see the berry in the bird's mouth, right? Why do you think this bird is beneficial to this plant? Good, so the berry that the bird is eating has seeds in it. So the bird relies on the tree for shelter and food, while the tree depends on the bird to disperse its seeds, right? Because the bird eats the berry and there are seeds in the berry, and the seeds aren't digested well by the bird. So when the bird goes to the bathroom, the seeds come back out, and wherever the bird happens to be at that moment, the seeds drop down or deposited and hopefully grow. So characteristics of seed plants. Seed plants have stems, leaves, and roots, which is something that we have talked about before. Seed plants have all different types of seeds. So this is an acorn. You all know the acorn. And this is a pepper seed. This is the seed of a carrot. That's sage, corn, and peas, which you should be familiar with. So as you can see, all of these seeds look different, and they all come from seed plants. Seed plants are categorized into two groups: gymnosperms, which produce cones, and angiosperms, which produce flowers. All of these seed plants have vascular systems which transport water and nutrients throughout the plant. And they all have roots, stems, and leaves. All seed plants have vascular tissues. Remember, the definition of a tissue is a group of specialized cells that all work together. So vascular tissue is found in all seed plants. There is the xylem and the phloem. So the xylem carries water and dissolved nutrients from the roots to the stem and to the leaves. And the phloem flows down, and it carries dissolved sugars throughout a plant. The cambium is a layer of tissue that produces new vascular tissue, and it grows between the xylem and the phloem. So the xylem and the phloem run parallel to one another up the stem of a plant. Next, we have the roots, and the roots are hidden under the soil. And if you have never pulled up a plant, you would not know that there were roots underneath, but all plants have roots that help anchor them to the ground, as well as carry water and nutrients up from the soil up into the plant. Plant roots are also able to store sugar. So, for example, Mr. Borchert has these maple trees, and he gets maple syrup out of the maple trees. And sugar stored in the roots of the sugar maple trees over the winter is converted to maple sap in the spring. Farmers like Mr. Borchert drain some of the sap from these trees and boil it to make maple syrup. And Mr. Borchert's maple syrup is absolutely phenomenal. So if we look at this picture, you can see this flower, and behind it there's a tree. So what's the difference between the tree stem and the flower stem? Very good. So the flower stem has a herbaceous stem like this, whereas the tree's stem is woody like this one. A plant that is most likely going to have an herbaceous stem is an annual. Here's some leaves that I've collected from my yard. These are gymnosperms. These are angiosperm leaves. This is an oak tree, rhododendron, blade of grass. These are both from different plants that are variations of the same species of plant, being an Andromeda. This is a bleeding heart. This is some weed that I picked from the yard. Boxwood, peony, a succulent, and a variety of different gymnosperms. So these three, if you notice, the leaves are narrow and needle-like, and they are thicker. These light green sections are new growth for the spring. And if you look at the leaves of the angiosperm, they are broader and they are thinner. As you can see, Even plants that are the same species come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. The main purpose of a leaf is to complete the process of photosynthesis. And photosynthesis produces glucose that the plant uses for energy in respiration. So let's look at this picture for a moment. Most leaves are made of layers of cells. So the top and the bottom of the leaf have the epidermal layer, which produces the cuticle layer, which is the waxy coating of the leaf. And so the cuticle's purpose is to prevent excess evaporation, and it helps the plant conserve water. Another characteristic that seed plant leaves have is something called a stomata. So the stomata is found on the lower epidermal cell layer, and its stomata is the plural form of the word, and stoma is the singular form of the word. And when the stomata opens, it allows carbon dioxide, oxygen, and water vapor to pass through them into the leaf. So if you could picture like your mouth, let's say this is your mouth, and we open our mouths when we want to eat food, right? We open our mouths, and when we are not eating or drinking water, or let's say breathing out of our mouth if we're exercising, our mouth is closed. The same thing goes for plants. When plants allow carbon dioxide and water vapor and oxygen to be exchanged, they open the stoma, and then the guard cells, my hands represent the guard cells, the guard cells close, and that prevents the leaf from exchanging gases. So when the plant needs gases for respiration, the guard cells open up, and the stomata allows gas exchange to occur. And when the guard cells close, the gas exchange is not occurring anymore. In addition, the leaf has a layer called a palisade mesophyll cell, and this is where the majority of photosynthesis takes place. Comparing our angiosperm leaf to our gymnosperm leaves, the gymnosperm leaves that we usually call needles are thinner, and they actually have a thicker cuticle because gymnosperms tend to grow in drier environments, whereas for angiosperms, the layer of the cuticle is a little bit thinner because they don't live in such dry conditions. Also, angiosperm leaves tend to be broader, meaning like wider, and thinner. In gymnosperms, the seeds are produced inside of a cone. In this group of gymnosperms includes the oldest plant, which is the bristlecone pine at 4,900 years old, the tallest plant, the coast redwood, that can grow up to 115 meters tall, and perhaps Earth's largest organism, the sequoia. So conifers such as spruces and pines and redwoods are all very familiar gymnosperms for you guys. There are more than 260,000 species of flowering plants or angiosperms. Angiosperms began to flourish about 80 million years ago, and these are the plants that you are most familiar with, and these are the plants that provide us with the majority of our food. Anytime that you have stopped to smell a flower, you have enjoyed an angiosperm. Angiosperms produce seeds that are part of a fruit. So if you've ever been into an apple, you might come in contact with the apple seed, right? The apple seed is found inside of the fruit. So an apple tree is an angiosperm. All angiosperms produce flowers, and some of these flowers are very, very beautiful and showy, and they're very attractive, which is good because it attracts pollinators. Then there are other angiosperms, for example, grass, where the seeds are produced by itty bitty little flowers that you probably wouldn't notice unless you actually took the time to look at a flowering grass leaf. Annuals, biennials, and perennials. If you have ever planted a tomato plant, once it fruits and then it dies in the fall, you have to replant your tomato plant, right? The tomato plant is an annual because it does not come back every growing season. Biennials complete their life cycle in 2 growing seasons. During the first year, the plant grows roots, stems, and leaves. Then during the second growing season, the plant produces new stems and new leaves, as well as flowers and produces seeds during the second growing season. After flowering and producing seeds, the plant dies. Carrots, beets, and foxglove are all biennials. Perennial plants can live for more than 2 growing seasons, so trees and shrubs that come back every single year are perennials. The leaf and stems of herbaceous perennial plants die in the winter, and the food is stored in the roots, which that food is then used to grow a new plant in the spring. Monocots and dicots. Flowering plants are organized into 2 groups, monocots and dicots. And based on the characteristics of the leaves, flowers, stems, and seeds, plants are either considered monocots or dicots. Just to review, the main point of this chapter is to compare angiosperms and gymnosperms. So angiosperms are flowering plants that produce seeds as part of a fruit, whereas gymnosperms produce seeds inside of a cone. That is the main purpose for this section of the book.